Hey guys, welcome back to Beyond Sunday, where we take you inside the culture of Vox Church. Once again, if you guys have any questions that you want to hear on the air or have any questions for any of our guests that we have, you can email us at beyondsunday@voxchurch.org. Today, I'm super excited. We have Justin Kendrick, our lead pastor of Vox Church. Welcome back, buddy.
It's always fun.
It's always good to have you. And
always fun.
I just want to dive right in. You recently went on a mission trip, which you talked about in your last sermon, and you had a couple crazy stories about your mission trip. But before we get into those stories, I wanted to, what was the background for this mission trip in particular? What made you want to go there?
Wow, that's a big question, actually. Excuse me. So for this one, I have known Jerry Wilson, who is a pastor and leader, for 25 years. He actually was instrumental in my dad coming to faith, and then started the church that I met Jesus in. And so Jerry has been a longtime friend, has been asking me to go to Haiti with him. They do this large crusade there, and there's a great church there, larger church right in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And so probably for the last 5 or 6 years, they've been saying, hey, you got to come to Haiti, you got to come to Haiti. And for me, I was just looking for the right time, right opportunity, and I really wanted to take my son, who's 13, my oldest son, out of the country, give him a totally different life experience, and then also really kind of have like a little bit of a coming of age ceremony for him where he transitioned from boy to young man. Yeah. And so I thought, where better to do it than in a completely different context in a third world country, away with his father for 7 days. And so it was awesome. So that was the backstory. Is this opportunity came up. We were actually supposed to go last year, and the nation of Haiti closed to any visitors when we were supposed to go because of some civil unrest. And so we weren't able to go, so we ended up going this year.
So you ended up going after that. It's just about 1 year later. Yeah. And, tell us a little bit about what Haiti was like. The country itself, I know there was a little bit of a civil war going on, and I know there was a bunch of turmoil. Yep. So what was it like going into a State of Union like that was just so uneasy and unrest?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a beautiful country. The people are beautiful. The culture is beautiful. It's an amazing place. The geography is incredible. Yeah. And so it's a real sacred place in many ways. It's also been, in a place of intense civil unrest for hundreds of years. And so right now, I don't even pretend to know the politics of the country, but I do know that there is massive civil war going on, a real fight for the president to resign, and different groups trying to overthrow the government. And so it was in a moment of calm when we decided to leave. But when we got there, I think the day we got there, the police department in Port-au-Prince went on strike. And so things just went nuts from day one. So so we landed in a very hostile environment, like from literally getting off the plane, the people that were with us were like, hey, hold on to your bag and hold on to your son, because both might be ripped out of your hands from the minute you get out of the airport. Jeez. And that was actually, kind of what we walked into. No. So, yeah.
Did you have any fear? I mean, I know we talked a little bit off air about your experience and a couple of different things that happened to you when you were there. But when you're walking off the plane and you hear that, it's like, hold on to your son, hold on to your bag. You're obviously like, let me grab my bags.
Yeah.
No,
I got some nice clothes in here. The kid will be fine.
Yeah. I mean, but what's going through your mind, especially being, you're a pastor, you're going there for a specific reason.
I really think that, and this is a bigger topic, but I think that there's a time in every young man's life where he has to do something dangerous. I think that, we live in this world where it's like every kid needs, elbow pads and a helmet, and never, ever, ever, ever is unsafe, and I'm not talking about being reckless or being foolish, but something inside of a young man never grows if he's never tested and if he never risks. And so we actually took this trip so that my son would be in an environment that was outside of his norm, outside of, beautiful America, and a bit dangerous. Now, again, I didn't want to be reckless or foolish, but I knew what I was getting into, and we knew that this trip would be a time where we would have moments where it was dangerous. And I mean, you think back in your own life, man, if you play it safe your whole life, you're never tested, you never know who you really are, and you never know what you really believe. But when you're in an environment where it's not so padded, you start to figure out what life is really about. And so, so we went with that understanding. We get there. things kind of crazy, you know. Now the ministry was awesome. So we did a pastors conference, got to preach every day to a group of pastors, about 800 pastors and leaders. And so that was amazing. I got to go with Tim, our New Haven campus pastor, and he did a great job, preached at the crusade, preached at the pastors conference. But then just a ton of time with my son, and everywhere I went, he went. And so we got to see a lot of people meet Jesus, really encourage the church there, which is strong. I mean, they're a brave, courageous church. But the political unrest really was underscoring everything we did. Yeah. And so there was one day where we're on this compound, and it's a safe compound. I mean, there's, you know, barbed wire and armed guards. But
as safe as it can be.
Yeah, but it's pretty intense there. And we're playing basketball, me and Gabriel, and just a little bit of time between sessions. And gunfire just breaks out, like maybe 100 yards from us, people shooting and screaming, and everybody starts running, and they're like, get inside, you know. And so that was something he hadn't really experienced, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then
not many of us have. I mean, that's
and then travel was nuts because there were a lot of carjackings going on. Anytime we were traveling, we were at risk. And so, you know, one time our vehicle got surrounded by guys. They're banging on our windows. You know, we just didn't know what's up. Are we going to live through this? Are we going to not live through this? You know, and so there were some intense moments of like, hey, you are traveling to go preach the gospel, but you're in the middle of a pretty hostile environment. And so,
it's literally like scenes out of a movie. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, sitting here telling me it's like, man, not one, not two, not three. I mean, but all these things happen to you in just 1 week's period.
Well, I mean, there was one point where we're in a pickup truck. Our car's got 4 or 5 guys around it. They're banging on our windows. They're looking for money, but these environments spiral quickly where it becomes just like a time where you're getting robbed, or, you know, a time where, you know, there's a carjacking. And so they see that there's a 13-year-old little white kid in this obviously not from Haiti, in this back seat. And so they're calling people over, they're banging on the windows. So I'm looking at Gabe, I'm like, put your hoodie on, you know? And so he's got his hoodie over his head, you know, he's kind of basically hiding in the back seat as these guys are scoping out, you know, who's in the car. And it was intense. It was like, it was getting to that point, that boiling point, when the traffic cleared and we drove away. And so it was like, it was right there, like, wow, what is going to happen here?
Yeah. And we just want to let everyone know that missions trips aren't all like this. I mean, if you're signing up for a missions trip, it's not like you're putting your life in danger. You know, there are opportunities where you can go, and, you know, the church offers a couple opportunities like that. You want to expand a little? It's not all violence and...
No, I mean, and again, we knew what we were getting into. I mean, this is a place where, you know, Christians to stand for Christ, it's a hostile environment. It is. And so, you know, but no, we have lots of other great missions trips that, you know, we go and do relief work, and, you know, we do all kinds of things throughout the year where it is safe. But the truth is, I mean, let's be real about life. Life isn't safe. Life, you know, you can trip and fall and smack your head and die today. And again, you're like, well, that's pretty morbid. No, it's a realist, you know. This world isn't safe. So if you want to live safe, then you don't live. And so if you want to live true, then you figure out, what do I really believe in? And you live for that. And so, you know, it's not the first time my life has felt like it's been at risk for the gospel, but it's the first time in a little while. And it was certainly the first time my son ever experienced anything like this. And I was so proud of him. He was brave. He was courageous. He didn't waver. And we were able to laugh through some of the intense moments. And I don't think he'll ever be the same.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible to hear. Just lastly about Haiti, what was one thing that you took away from your overall trip? Not the danger, but what was one thing that you took away as, let's just say, a pastor? You know, what was the most impactful moment during that time?
I was so impressed by the church in Haiti, the people of God in Haiti. Wow. I mean, we had 10, 15,000 people walk to a crusade when public transportation was shut down, when the city was on high alert, when violence was in the streets. They still came and they worshiped Jesus for hours. So looking out on that crowd, it was like, wow, you know, how many Americans would have made that walk? You know, how many American Christians would have made that walk? I don't know. And so I was so impressed by the endurance, the perseverance of the Haitian Christians that we were able to work with. So yeah, it was just like, man, so much to learn from my brothers. Also, just you know, anytime you step out of the American context, you realize how privileged we are, you know? And so like we get to our room and there's a lizard crawling up my wall. And the other pastor I was with, he's like, yeah, I had a lizard in my pants when I put them on the other day. You know, the other guy I'm with, he's like, yeah, tarantula ran out from under my bed.
You can't make it
it's
up.
like, yeah, so we're living in this room where it's like spiders, tarantulas, lizards. The power shuts off at night because the government doesn't provide electricity all 24 hours of the day.
Yeah.
So you're in the pitch black with lizards and spiders, you know, and it's just like just the little things of life that like
so you don't even want to turn the lights on.
Nah,
it's like just whatever it is.
That's right.
Whatever it is.
Just
Could be a shoelace. Could be
could
who
be
knows?
a tarantula.
Who knows? That's wild.
Yeah, so that was good too. You know.
Yeah. Well, I guess
it's good for the soul.
Yeah.
If you can sleep through that, you know,
you could get through anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, to switch gears a little bit,
Yes.
you know, it's really impactful to hear about your trip and hear about the missions and the work that, you know, you're doing along with the church and all that. But I wanted to talk a little bit. I had a conversation with someone a little while ago about true love and God's love that he has for us. Yeah. And not to completely switch gears, but the question that he posed to me was, you know, do you have a true relationship with God? And my first answer was, yeah, I have a true relationship with God. And then he asked a follow-up question, which really kind of threw me for a loop. He goes, if you were to envision that your daughter was hanging on the cross, what would your reaction be? And I didn't know how to answer. I literally sat there and I was thinking I would be beside myself. I would be devastated. I would be crushed. I wouldn't know what to do. And then his response to that was, this is the love that Jesus has for us. This is the love that he gives. Do you have that same kind of love? Because I've been going through, you know, a change in life, and I've really tried to dive in and you know, have my relationship with God go even deeper. And these are the questions that I start to think about. Have you ever thought about that? Put yourself in God's shoes and think about, what if my son was on the cross? Yeah,
I think that's one of the biggest misunderstandings about God himself. So first of all, God is triune, Father, Son, and Spirit. So though three persons, he's one essence. And so the Father sending the Son wasn't a cop-out for the Father. It was harder for the Father, who is self-giving love, to send his one and only Son than it would have been for the Father himself to hang on the cross. Just as the little illustration we can use is, you know, I would gladly die to protect my son in Haiti than to see my son taken and killed. And so, you know, any parent can resonate with that. It's like, no, I don't even think about the fact that I'd give my life because it's my kid. How much more so would it be difficult to see my child die? And so, you know, I think this is the most radical expression of love. Not just that Christ Jesus, the eternal Son, volunteered, but that the Father allowed him to go, which was far harder than actually making the choice himself. But I think the other side of it, I know years ago I read an exhaustive work by Jonathan Edwards about what Christian maturity is. And after a lot of discussion, he gets down to this idea where he says that Christian maturity in its essence is the outworking of agape love, God's love in our lives, period. And that is, for me, maybe the most challenging thought I have ever had. That Christian maturity is not how many Bible verses you know, or how long you've been to church, or how much money you give. Christian maturity, and this is the essence of 1 Corinthians 13, is how well do you love? How well do you love God, and how well do you love others? And that's the measuring stick for your true maturity. So it's like, wow, you could build a big ministry or have a successful life or a happy family, but not really love God yourself in a way that is sacrificial and in a way that reflects that agape love.
And that brings up a good point. As I was in this conversation, it kind of went back to the start. And he goes, listen, when you were in the dating phase of life, what were you doing when you started dating your wife? Well, it wasn't just, hey, I text her once a day and I hope that, you know, I get a response and wait for the next day. It's like, no, when you're dating, you're constantly in contact with that person. You're constantly, all you want to do is hang out with that person. You want to talk with that person. And he goes, is that your relationship with God? Are you taking that road with God? And I was like, oh man, it's like, you know, when you think about it that way, it really kind of kicks you in the head. You know, every decision we make, is that how we're thinking about life?
Yeah. And you go back to, like, you know, that old song that when I was like in youth group, first becoming a Christian, that people saying, Jesus, lover of my soul. And it's like, well,
that's a good one.
It's an oldie. is he the lover of my soul? You know, is God, excuse me.
Yeah.
Little burp there. Is God the lover of my soul?
Yeah.
It's a big question.
It honestly is.
Yeah.
You know, and as I go through my walk and as I go through my journey, there's points where you're like, man, that's not necessarily how I pictured my relationship. You know, it's not that constant going forward. Has there ever been a time where you feel like you've kind of backslid a little bit, you know, in your walk?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I think, is there a time where I feel like my love has grown cold? Yes. Is there a time where I feel like I've walked away? Honestly, no. Since I met Jesus as a teenage kid, I don't feel like I've ever walked away. I feel like he stunned me with his love to such a degree that that my life belongs to Jesus.
Yeah.
But do I feel like there have been times where my love has grown cold? Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think that that's true of any relationship. You know, I mean, I've been married now almost 16 years, and that relationship has seasons. It has phases. It's not always the same. And it's true with God too. You know, there is like puppy love, young love with God, and then there's mature love. But the truth is that the fire in your heart, just like in your marriage, should, if cultivated strategically, increase, not decrease.
Yeah.
And although it looks different, the young, exciting firsts are different, you know. When you've been married 16 years, it's not like, well, we've never had dinner together. It's like, well, no, we have a lot of times, and that's not new. But I know, honestly, my love for my wife is genuinely deeper and richer and greater. And so also my love for God really is deeper, richer, greater. But that takes a lot of intentionality and hard work, or your love will naturally peter out. It'll naturally grow cold. And so keeping your love hot for God, I think has got to be the number one priority of life. I think about it like this. If there is a God, and this is sobering, if there is a God that can truly be known, think about this for your life, right? Just like turn off all the ministry and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, if there's a God that can truly be known, would that not be the most important thing in the world?
Yeah.
And if there's not, if there is no God, if all that we believe is a myth, if it's all fake, if it's not real, then life is meaningless. At its core, nothing means anything because you're just going to die and become dirt. Yeah. But if it does, it's the biggest wager in life. If it is true, then nothing is more important. Wow. And are you willing to live like that? And too many of us live in the in-between. We either live, you know, few people live with the reality that there is no God, therefore life is meaningless and I am hopeless. Few people go that far. Yeah. But then few people also go to the extent that says there really is a God, and I'm going to let that change everything. It's going to rearrange everything. I'm not going to cling to my money or my pleasures or my comforts or my plan because there really is a God, and that changes everything. I'm going to live forever. Yeah. That changes everything. It should mess up every part of my life. And if it hasn't, then I don't really believe it.
Yeah.
You know?
So going right back, I mean, trust me, that's powerful. But for some of our listeners, what we want to know is what are some ways that you cultivate that relationship? You know, believing what we believe. Yep. I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably, you know, have some sort of idea about Christianity and you have, you know, you're walking in your faith. But what are some ways that we can help cultivate our relationship with God so we can develop that deep down desire and passion for him? I mean, what are some things that you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. You know, I think I'm talking about this a little bit in my sermon, but...
am I giving anything away?
It's okay. Yeah, it's all good. We all got to hear it again and again and again and again. I do too. I think one of the big mistakes that we make is, I love the story of Jacob. I'll talk about it in my sermon, but the story of Jacob where it says that after all the craziness of his life, finally he's left alone with God and he has to wrestle with God. And I think that this is a moment that for whatever reason, a lot of Christians avoid in life. What I mean by that is like, why do I come to church? Well, I really love my friends, or I love the feeling I get when we sing, or the messages are helpful for my life, or, you know, it's good for my kids, all these things. Not that any of those are necessarily totally wrong, but at the end of the day, how do you feel when you are utterly and completely alone with God? How do you feel when all the glamour and lights and music and everything else is gone and it's just you and God? Do you feel like you've got about 90 seconds of prayers and then you're out? And if you do, that's evidence of a shallow relationship. You know, if you can't stand alone with God, then you haven't really faced the most important conversation of life. which is you and God by yourself. Because the day's going to come where Kurt Garceau and Justin Kendrick and all the people here that are filming and everything else die.
Yeah.
And when you die, you don't stand there with your wife. You don't stand there with your mom. You stand there utterly and completely alone.
Jeez.
And so in standing there completely alone, is that an uncomfortable position? Just me and God in the room. And so the point, what I'm trying to make is, how do you cultivate love? You get used to that scenario now. You make time to be utterly and completely alone, and you wrestle. You ask the hard questions. You talk through that you study. You seek him. You explore who he really is. And if he's not really there, then all of this is a waste. But if he really is there, then this is the most important thing in the world. So I think the first thing you do, if you say, how do I grow my love for God? You've got to be willing to be alone. And truthfully, you know, in our culture, in our context, we avoid this like the bubonic plague. I mean, we turn the podcast on, we turn the music on. As soon as we get in the car, I can't have 90 seconds of what people call white space, just clear space where I'm just not interrupted. And so the soul who finds God must be willing to be utterly alone, not for 5 minutes a day, for more than that. And I do think that's where it starts.
Well, don't turn this podcast off.
But alone. Goodbye. I'm done.
That's it.
After you listen to this podcast, get alone.
So being alone, you know, some of the practices that, you know, we have praying, we have reading the Bible, we have things like that. But what are some things that you do that gives you that ultimate connection with God? Is there one thing that kind of supersedes in your life? Like, hey, you know, I'm going to have a conversation with God today. This is what I'm going to do. Or is it just kind of all the above for you?
Yeah, I think the number one, we've talked about it before, but it's just so critical. You got to go back to it. The number one thing when it comes to being alone with God is expectation. You know, let it be done according to your faith. And so what that means is, if you come to God expecting that he will not speak, will not move, will not visit you, then you're right. He probably won't, because God's power runs on the power lines of faith. You shut down those power lines, you cut those power lines, and you stop experiencing him. So you have to come with expectation. Well, how do you build expectation? You build expectation through his word. If his word is true, then he can be found. You'll seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. And so if you come to God with a full heart, with all your heart, you can come with expectation that he's actually going to talk to you. He's going to, not because the pastor's talking, not because some spiritual person prayed for you, just because you and God are alone. And so meeting with God begins with a profound expectation based on his promise. And so you say, okay, you said this, I'm going to believe this, so now I expect you to respond when I show up. And so, you know, the beauty of meeting with God is that, you know, he's not a machine. He's not a math problem. And so sometimes he's going to be totally stark silent and leave you there by yourself asking questions with no answer. And sometimes he's going to light you up with his truth through a dream or a vision or a word or a sign, and your heart's going to be on fire. He's not going to do it the same way twice. He's not going to do it the exact way he did it for your friend, because God is a person. He's not a math problem. And so God is going to meet you in a distinct, unique, creative way. I love the picture C.S. Lewis gives in the Chronicles of Narnia, where it says, you know, Aslan never comes and rescues the same way twice. He does it different every time. And so it is with our relationship with God. You got to go expecting that he's going to meet you, but also expecting that he's going to do it in a different way, a unique way. And so meeting with God is mysterious, but this is how you build the chronicles of your story, the mysterious journey of personal relationship with God that is real with you and him and only you and him. And until you build that, your relationship is just a bunch of propped up Christian principles. And it's interesting because your last sermon in the Colossus series that we just listened to, you know, you had a couple crazy points. And going back into some of the books that I'm reading now, I think I just finished Fathered by God. And one of the ways that he talks about how God shows his true love to us is through creation and through nature. And what he says is, you know, we just don't stop and look and see
the way that God loves us, because we're so busy and our lives are so chaotic. Yep. And that right there was one of the most impactful things that I could have, you know, because how often do you sit out here and just stare at the trees or stare? I mean, you maybe a little bit more than us, but you know, I feel like life is so busy. I never stop and just look at the landscape and see what's going on. But that's God. That's God's love.
Well, the old desert fathers. So, you know, historically through the years of Christianity, there were those that were called the desert fathers, which were individuals who spent years, sometimes decades, alone with God in the desert, seeking him, trying to discern who he is and know his heart. They would talk about what they called thin places, which was places where it felt like the distance between heaven and earth was less, you know, those thin places. And, you know, all that sounds mystical and strange. The truth is we all know it. We all know it. You're walking through the woods and the sun breaks through the trees and all of a sudden you get this sense. What is that? That's a thin place. You know, it's one of those places where you kind of touch God. And I know for me, the scripture says all of creation speaks his glory, right? Yeah. And so, you know, at least once a week, I really try to, I get to the beach, I have a couple spots I go, and I just watch the sun come up and watch the birds and pause and listen. And it's in that context of nature, in one of those thin places, that God so often becomes near. Yeah. And so, you've got to learn that not all places are created equal, not all moments are created equal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was very impactful, and I totally appreciate it. We're going to jump into our mailbag, trying to lighten things up a little bit. We got you know, a couple minutes left.
Into the love of God.
Yeah,
and now the mailbag.
Now the mailbag. I mean, all these people email us. I want to make sure I get some questions in.
Yes.
So the first question is, you know, very easy.
Yes.
It says, I think it's from, Catherine. Catherine wants to know, what is your favorite movie?
Oh, boy.
I know. See, to lighten things up. You know, we were so deep for a little while. Favorite movie?
Miracle. No, just kidding.
Oh, that's my favorite.
I knew that.
I was going to say, yes, that's my favorite movie.
Yeah. I knew the hockey player would like that movie. Yeah. No, that is a good movie. But, you know, I don't know. I really don't know.
You can't pick 12 either, because you have a tendency to do this.
I know, man. I don't have a favorite movie.
It's one question. You have to answer with one answer.
Yeah. I mean, I think time of life for me, I know it's cheesy because it's like
life.
Well, no, I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
It's kind of cheesy because it was like the movie everybody talked about. But for me, as like a young man, when Braveheart came out, it blew me away. It blew me away. Right. But I was like 17, and that was just a different time. And I don't know. It was one of those movies that spoke to me at the time. I know it's like the cheesy movie that everybody quotes or whatever, but it was a big deal for me at the time. I don't really have a favorite movie though.
Braveheart's good. We'll go with Braveheart.
Yeah, I really can't commit to that.
William Wallace.
Yeah, right.
I am William
Not Wallace. I think it was Wallace. Not mollusk.
I think it's a microphone.
Beep, beep.
But I appreciate it. I have a whole bunch of other questions. I think we're going to save them for next time. But
that's good.
I appreciate you coming back out today. And guys, once again, if you have any questions for Justin or any of our other guests, please email beyondsunday@voxchurch.org. We'll see you next time.